So, welcome to our Servitization live webinar on the AI preparedness and servitization. And are we ready? Are manufacturers ready to adopt AI to accelerate servitization? For today's webinar, please remember if you have any questions, do drop them in the Q&A section, and we will look at them at the end of the webinar. For the agenda, I will be your host and I will introduce all of the speakers in a bit. Then we will look at the relevance of artificial intelligence in the context of servitization. And we will have Professor Andreas Schroeder for that. Then we'll dive deep into the use cases of AI for services, and both Andreas and Achint will contribute to presenting some of these use cases. Then we'll go into a discussion on, are we ready? Are the manufacturers ready to adopt AI to enable services and servitization? And finally, we will have a Q&A session for all of you to put your questions forward, and I will present those to Achint and Andreas. So to introduce all of our guests today and our speakers, we have Professor Andreas Schroeder. Andreas is a professor of digital strategy and in service innovation at Lancaster University Management School. He's a prominent academic in the field of information systems and has been working in this field for more than 15 years now. And he is also one of the most highly cited scholars in the field of digitally enabled servitization and has been working with manufacturing firms and different industrial companies to support them in maximizing the value of digital information for servitization. Next, we have Achint Varia. Achint is a computer engineer by training and an MBA from Cranfield School of Management. He is the co-founder and chief revenue officer of Industriality. And just like Industriality, Achint's aim is to accelerate the transformation of product-centric firms to service-centric firms using digital technologies such as industrial Internet of Things, digital twins, machine learning, and artificial intelligence. All of these technologies are very much part of the different services that Industriality offers to industrial firms and manufacturing firms. And finally, you have me. My name is Dr. Parikshit Naik. I am the commercial director of the Advanced Services Group. I have been in the business for 4 years. And before that, I did a PhD in the field of Internet of Things in servitization. So you can see all three of us are very passionate about this topic. You will notice that I will refer to Professor Andreas as Andy during this webinar. I have had the privilege of being supervised by Andy during my PhD. So I have this rare permission to be able to call him Andy, if that's okay with you. At this stage, I would like to, before I introduce who we are at Advanced Services Group, I would like to offer an interesting opportunity for everybody listening to this webinar. If you count how many times we say the word servitization throughout the next 56 minutes, we have a special offer for you. If you send us an email of as close as possible to the accurate number you think we have used the word servitization, Achint will be giving you a trial of the Twin GPT service solution by Industriality, all free of cost, and the closest to the real count wins. So from this point onwards, the count starts. So who are we? The Advanced Services Group. We are a research-led advisory firm, and we provide a number of services to manufacturing companies and industrial firms to grow, compete, and differentiate through advanced services and new forms of innovative services. We provide this through a range of formats in the form of advice, training, and our partnership, which is a community and a consortium of like-minded pioneering manufacturers. If you want to know more about how we support firms, please do contact us and we can have a conversation about that. We have worked with over 450 firms of all sizes, different industry sectors, and all around the world in achieving a single goal. Our mission has always been to accelerate servitization and the adoption of advanced services within these businesses. Many of the logos you see on the right-hand side of the screen are probably quite familiar to you, and there are quite a few others which are protected by NDAs. You've already heard me say the word a couple of times, so keep your count on, but let's discuss what we mean by servitization and advanced services. You see on this services staircase, there are 3 types of services, starting with the orange ones, which are called base services. A majority of industrial firms provide these. Then we have intermediate services. Almost all firms provide these as well, where you have product break fix, assured maintenance. And the key outcome here is guaranteeing the condition of the product. And finally, we have advanced services, where we think about the outcomes that the product delivers to the customer, whether it is about uptime, whether it's about performance, or whether it's about enabling the processes in which the product sits, or at the top of the staircase, whether it's about enabling the business platform in which the product sits. All of these services have the product at its core, but the ultimate goal is to enable an outcome that your customer wants to achieve. The process of moving from any step lower on the staircase to any step higher is what we call servitization. Essentially, you're moving away from outputs to outcomes, moving away from ownership to usership. And that is what we call servitization. And that is the transformation that we will be talking about when we think of AI. And to learn more about this topic of servitization and our thinking behind it, we have our recently launched book called Servitization Strategy, published by Palgrave Executive Essentials, and also our playbook, which clearly describes how to implement this strategy, not just the what and why of this strategy. So if you are interested, please visit servitizationstrategy.com and you can find out more about it there. Getting into the topic of how did we come to discussing AI in the context of servitization, we have been recognized by the National Composite Centre, which is part of High Value Manufacturing Catapult in the UK, one of the biggest catapults of the 7 different catapults in UK. We have been recognized by them as the global authority on servitization, and they asked us to write a report, a white paper, on are manufacturers ready to adopt AI to enable servitization. And it was a primary piece of research that we did for National Composite Centre that is doing great work in the University of Bristol, putting in a lot of investment in helping small businesses to exploit the power of digital technology, to exploit the power of artificial intelligence. And as a result of that, we produced a very comprehensive piece of white paper that will be launched, and all of those attending this webinar and those who have registered this webinar will receive a copy of that as well. So that is the background behind why we are discussing this today. And we came out with very interesting insights on, are we really prepared to adopt AI? And if we are not, what do we need to do in order to get there? So at this stage, I would like to hand over to Andy to tell us a bit more about when and where does AI become relevant to servitization.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much, Parikshit. So I think the important thing is right now to place AI within the context of servitization. Here's another count for you. So, but in order to do this, we have to understand what we mean really in the back end of an organization when they servitize. And we want to move away from the idea that servitization is a decision. Servitization for us is a process. It starts on the left-hand side, you see an exploration stage where the organization develops an understanding of what servitization could mean for them. It's about developing the argument, why would this be relevant, committing resources. And it's often around forming a coalition of people within the organization that start to see that there is some value outside the traditional product model that the organization followed so far. That usually leads to the next stage, which we call the engagement stage, where it is about developing a clear understanding of where the value actually sits, what kind of service value can be generated by the organization. So this is a stage where the manufacturer usually engage in the development of hypotheses in order to test and develop and demonstrate an understanding of how much value under which circumstances for whom of their customers can be offered. The next stage then is the expansion stage. This is where decisions are being made of what is the future value proposition. This is where investments are being made. This is where difficult choices are being made. And this is where the entire back end of the enabling back end for the servitization or the development or the delivery of advanced services need to be in place. The last stage is the exploitation stage, where basically the service is delivered at scale. And it's a continuous refinement and continuous optimization of the service delivery, but this is where scale is the main objective. So when we look at this and we ask the question of where AI is most relevant, it's easy to say this is in the exploitation stage. This is at the stage where scale matters, and any kind of efficiency that can be generated by some level of optimization based on AI would make a big gain. But on the other hand, this might be a short-sighted view on this, and this is a big part of what the report is about. If an organization starts to think about AI in the exploitation stage, they have basically missed a large opportunity early on to be ready when it really matters. So the exploitation stage is not the stage where AI thinking should start. It is probably the stage where it is most painful, the consequences of not having considered AI early enough. So when we go backwards from the exploitation stage to the expansion stage, this is where we talk about back-end development. We talk about investment in systems. We talk about investments in processes. Again, a big part of this will be developing AI models in anticipation of the scale and the cost and the risk that the organization will take on when they offer advanced services at scale. So again, to the question of where AI starts to become relevant, it is as the business model emerges somewhere between exploration and engagement stage, where hypotheses are being tested, where value is being demonstrated. The thinking should start about how can we possibly scale this up at a later stage? And what do we need to put in place at this stage already to be able to exploit this at a later stage? So this leads me to the next question. So what are the use cases for AI in servitization? So in order to map out these use cases that we encountered as part of the research, we took a model that looks at the different information needs of a manufacturer engaged in servitization. So the argument is that AI will provide additional insights, additional information, additional process support for a lot of different areas, and they can be largely grouped into these categories here. So and I will go just very quickly through them, and then Achint will provide illustrative examples to put some real-world insights into these categories. So for a manufacturer that servitizes and is developing or delivering advanced services, they will take on a lot of responsibility. They will take on cost, they will take on risk, they will take on commitment for the uptime of the product. So for them, predictive maintenance is a critical capability. These manufacturers need to be able to anticipate maintenance needs and provide the maintenance at the best possible time. Again, also these manufacturers will be responsible for uptime, so repair efficiency. Every repair, every piece of downtime is a cost to the manufacturer, and every inefficiency in the repair is a cost to the manufacturer. So AI tools that can help to improve the efficiency or improve the predictivity, the accuracy of the prediction of the maintenance needs is critical for the manufacturers when we talk about scaling it up. Consumable management, again, is also often a part of an advanced services offer, and that needs to be anticipated and optimized. Otherwise, the costs will just eat into the profitability of the services at the end. Often the manufacturer not just takes on the service operation and is interested in cutting costs around delivering the services, but they also want to support their customers in offering opportunities to optimize the customer's business model themselves. So there's where advisory services come in. A lot of manufacturers can advise their customers how to get more value from the product they use and how to better run the line or the business process in which the product is being used. So advisory services, being able to simulate different scenarios for the customers is critical there to offer these additional value to the customer. Self-repair assistance along the same line, helping the customers to make their own decisions, provide them with all the expertise effectively and efficiently that the manufacturer has is critical. And AI tools, generative AI tools, for example, as Achin will describe, can support this. Demonstrating service contribution is difficult for an advanced service provider. An advanced service provider often wants to provide a seamless maintenance regime, zero downtime, and consumables when they are required. So it's often difficult to actually show at the end of the day how much value have we really created by just taking away all the things that would usually be very visible for the customer. So there's a big need of finding ways of demonstrating cost that has been saved, risk that have been taken away, and how efficiency gains or gains for the customers have been demonstrated. So that draws in a lot of different reports and data resources that need to be compiled. Again, AI is a tool that can bring all of this together. The same thing is about operational misuse. If a manufacturer takes the responsibility for uptime, they will want to make sure that they monitor quite closely what is happening with the asset in order to be able to say this is within the contract and this is outside the contract. And this downtime is not down to our inefficiencies somewhere else. The big part of this is also knowledge creation. So a manufacturer that provides their product as a service enters a different world. They will have a very good understanding of their product as far as the product goes. But the product within a service context and within taking the responsibility for the value that the product creates is often a different thing. So being able to learn fast how the product is being used and how further value propositions can be developed of this is critical. So with this, having mapped out this as a framework of where AI can play a role, I'm handing over to Achin, please, who provides us with some of the use cases or some of the illustrations that he provides. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Andreas. So first of all, thank you for inviting me on the webinar, and I'm humbled to be with two doctors, so two experts in their own field. So thank you for that. So what Professor Andreas said, let me group them into two parts, right? Essentially, servitization is about delivering uptime and delivering service. And it's in its most simplistic sense, it is about creating peace of mind for your customers, and it's about delivering extracting maximum outcome from the equipment that you are providing, right? Essentially, that is what it boils down to. And so we will cover those two examples in those two topics of delivering higher uptime and service. However, what we've observed is data and technology is the underlying underlying enabler for servitization. And if you take any manufacturer, about 80% of the equipment, which is in the field, they are not in any service contracts. They are not connected. About 20% might be in service contracts. Less than 5% are potentially connected with IoT. And then even a lesser part of that is probably part of servitization contracts, right? So that is a very typical manufacturing company landscape. And then as they transform, those numbers will change, but it is a ladder, the servitization ladder that Parikshit mentioned. It's a ladder, and customers go climb that ladder. And so what we think is there's a huge install base out there. It needs to be enabled with data. And so we'll first talk about how AI is used to do the whole data gathering to get manufacturers get started with that servitization journey. Then we will cover the two core parts, which is delivering uptime and delivering service enabled with AI. And then once we've done that, as manufacturer, you need to do the go-to-market and package it with business outcomes. And then we'll see how AI can be used there. So data comes in various different ways, in various different methods. And what you see on my screen, these are real examples of companies and manufacturing companies that we've worked with and the kind of data that we deal with on a day-to-day basis, right? They are sometimes in the infrastructure and construction space. They are handwritten documents which are 50 years old because the equipment lifetime is that long. And maybe for a POC, you could do these things manually, but as Professor Andrea said, if you wanted to scale, you need to start digitizing all of this data to deliver on the performance guarantees that you might have given to your customers. And so what we believe is we can use AI to bring all of this data and then make it asset-centric. Servitization, as we are talking about, it's very much about delivering maximum outcome and maximum uptime from a given equipment or a machine. And so we need to bring everything which is asset-centric and then bring all of this data in one place so that you can deliver the service that your customer needs. So I'll give you a couple of examples. We are working with an concrete manufacturing plant in the US, close to $1 billion revenue. And a lot of their documents are sat in folders, are sat in PDF documents, in lots of Excels, ERPs. And we are using AI to bring all of that data in one place so that you can, as Professor Andrea said, make sure consumables, make sure parts, make sure service is delivered on time, faster fixes are delivered, and that is very much part of that journey. So that is one example where you can use data to bring your whole install base in one place and deliver better outcomes. The second one, which a lot of people talk about, is uptime, which is very, very critical, because the higher the more uptime you have, the more outcome you can generate, and then the more profit you can make as a manufacturer, and the more value is extracted. So we've got, I'll cite a couple of examples, one good and one bad. We have a compressor company. They have about 150 MB of data coming in every day for about 25 compressors. And so if you take that, about 350 GB of data for the whole year. And so if you think of that, it's not humanly possible to observe all of this data and then make sense from it. And what has happened is a lot of this data would come in. You'll have to bring that data to make sense. You'll have to aggregate that data. You have to then, normalize it, make it, make sense of it, and then create insights and recommendations from it. And I'll start with a bad example. We've worked with a company where they are collecting all of this data for 4 years with the hope data is the new oil, data is the new gold. At some point, we will make use of it. And then after 4 years, once they've collected terabytes of data, and then they said, hey, use your AI and extract value out of it. It's not AI is not that magic. AI can be used to take all of this information and make and extract value, but you have to start engaging with the right skill set, with the right technology to make sure you're collecting the right data, and that is linked to the business outcome. So that is very, very important. The compressor company I mentioned, they are using this information for two purposes. One, making their products better, to understand where are the recurring failures. And the second is about making sure, because they're in the hydrogen space, they are making sure that the hydrogen delivery is done with a maximum uptime, and if there are failures, they are predicted beforehand, and they are fixed. So parts are delivered on time, and they are fixed on time. And so both of those are good examples where you need to not focus on undifferentiated offering of collecting raw data, aggregating data. All of those things are solved by the mega companies like Google, like Microsoft, like AWS. Leverage those, don't build those undifferentiated offering, but manufacturers should focus on where their core expertise are, which is focus on your machines, focus on your insights, focus on reliability, and making sense of this data. So that would be my advice. But those are good two examples where we've seen, if you focus on your core competency, you are extracting much more value. The third example is, you've brought the data, you have the install base, your AI has predicted that there's potential failure, but then you need a service technician in the field to go and fix something. In that case, the current trend that we've seen is there are old service technicians some of them are retiring, new service technicians are coming in, and there's a training gap that is seen in the market. So that is one problem. And second is, a lot of this data sits in files and folders, and it takes a long time. And again, coming back to Professor Andreas's couple of points, faster fix and finding parts, that is a challenge. Again, I'll cite a couple of examples. In a large chiller manufacturing company, a lot of these service reports were just filed and not available to anyone, and so historic data was being lost, and parts identification took up to 4 days. And what was happening in the industry is the person who delivers the quote fastest, they would get the business, and so their parts conversion was failing through. And so here is an example of how AI can be used as a co-pilot with the machine. You can ask in natural language, how do I fix this issue? What is my part number? What was the last service done? What are my weekly maintenance tasks? And so you can actually enable self-service for your customers, or you can enable self-service for your service technicians, where all of this data can be taken in, and then they can be used for fixing issues in the field. And so again, from a servitization perspective, this is a great step towards making self-service and creating higher uptime and delivering better outcomes. So again, hope you're counting on the word servitization. And then finally, all of this can come into outcomes, which is you can take all of this data, use it from an asset scoring perspective. And so we've got a Japanese tractor manufacturer where they take all of this data, come up with a loyalty score like a frequent flyer, and then create a second degree price discrimination where you can extract maximum value from the customer and create a transparency with your customer. So all of these are different examples of how AI can be used, and you can climb up the servitization ladder and offer different outcomes. So with that, I'm going to hand it over back to Parikshit. You're on mute, Parikshit.
Yeah, yeah.
Sorry, I have double muted myself, the headphones and the system. I was saying it was very exciting, and thank you for sharing the examples and these illustrations as well. So in the next section, I have some rapid fire questions for you guys. They have not been generated by AI, they have been generated by me. So please do your best to answer them. So first question is for Andy. So what if customers cannot develop AI capabilities internally? How important is that factor?
Okay. So again, a big part of our report was, or our research was looking at a lot of companies start with the belief that they need to develop the AI capabilities themselves. And they think about hiring staff and developing core capabilities to do this. And we want to challenge this. One thing is about being able to exploit AI, and the other one is being able to source AI capabilities, which may be an internal solution or it may be interfacing with an external provider. So I think the first answer is getting AI and being able to exploit AI as part of the servitization business model is absolutely critical. When we talk about the scalability at the end, we talk about profit, we talk about cost, we talk about risk. All of this needs to be supported by continuous optimization in order to be able to deliver all of these commitments. But the question is, does it need to be the manufacturer themselves who has all of these capabilities to do that? And in the report, you will see that we ask the question, or we see the trend of, if a manufacturer cannot compete with AI, what can they compete as part of their business model? But they're not software companies. So their focus maybe, in quite a lot of instances, should be about being good at sourcing AI capabilities and then exploiting these as part of their business model. So the AI itself will be an absolute critical tool in order to achieve the scalability, but maybe it is not the technical authority of the manufacturer to really get the maximum out of the technology itself, but in order to exploit it as part of its business model. So that would be my answer.
Thank you very much. And Achint, following up on that then, and some of the examples you showed of a large amount of capabilities can be done by Microsoft, AWS, Google, and very large companies. So can manufacturers exploit the value of AI without having to make very large investments?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that is entirely possible. So I used to, I used to work for Honeywell and Rolls-Royce before. And back then, 15, 17 years ago, a lot of the cloud technology, a lot of the hyperscalers were not that advanced. And at that point in time, you had to build this underlying capability in the technology. But now a lot of that is already built. It's undifferentiated offering. I would not recommend any manufacturer to spend time in building data pipelines, in building data models. Those are just statistical outcomes. My recommendation would always be to be focused on what is the business outcome that you want to do, craft a project around it, and then work backwards from there. So that is one. And the second, I think there is a cultural challenge in any manufacturer, and rightly so. A manufacturing company, by definition, is an engineering first company. Historically, they've always worked towards creating the best product with the lowest sort of breakage and lowest failure. They work in parts per million failure rates. Right? Those are the metrics that they start with. And AI and software, by definition, they are iterative and they are built with experimentation. And so that sort of a cultural difference, it becomes a very hard thing for manufacturers to build. And hence it's important for companies to partner. And when you partner, you are reducing the risk, reducing the cost, and able to go much faster. I think Tom Palmer, I heard him on one of the webinars before from Rolls-Royce. He said, building partnerships is one of the muscle memory that you need to build instead of building capabilities. And I think that resonated very well.
I think that's a brilliant answer, and probably Andy and I both would very much agree with the obsession manufacturers have of wanting to do everything by themselves and not looking at partnerships as quickly as possible. So Andy, coming back to you with another question then, if we think of developing these capabilities, how easy is it to develop AI expertise via recruitment or acquisitions?
Yeah. So it's very, very difficult. So we work with a large range of manufacturers, as we described at the beginning. Even several of the multinationals find it very difficult to recruit AI expertise. This is, I mean, manufacturing in general has a recruitment challenge. They have often, a very, very misplaced understanding in the public around what manufacturing is, what the opportunities are, how the jobs look like, how cutting edge it actually is. So all of this compounds in general in a recruitment challenge. In AI, with an AI topic and the range of AI expertises that are required to run run AI programs, this compounds itself. So a lot of these recruits are looking to get into software companies themselves in order to have clear progression opportunities and so on and so on. So for manufacturers, it is very, very difficult. But also, again, I want to come to the point and the conundrum that we think really needs to be discussed. AI is absolutely critical for the manufacturer to provide, to servitize and provide advanced services at scale. But the AI developments that are now happening are so fast that it is, even for the most advanced manufacturers, difficult to keep up with this. And we're talking about really the most advanced manufacturers. They require a lot of investment to maintain, just to stand still, or to be part of this development. So most manufacturers will not have the opportunity to make these investments and to keep up with the speed. And it doesn't, they will find it very difficult to recruit, but also to buy other software companies. Again, these constant fast iterations will then need to be maintained to ensure that the continuous value is being derived from the software part. So again, focusing on putting the expertise in partnering, sourcing, and exploiting as part of a sophisticated business model, I think this is where the future lies.
And if I can just add to that, I think Professor Andreas, what you mentioned is absolutely critical. Faster time to market is so critical here because the technology itself is advancing at such a fast pace. If you we all know the challenges of hiring. It takes a few months to hire the right person and a few more months to get them onboarded, and then by that time there are 3 other capabilities that are out there which you need to start building the memory for. So that's one. And second, AI is not just one skill set, right? You need people with technology infrastructure, you need people with statistical analysis, you need people with programming, and then you need people with industrial IT, OT sort of skill set, and then you need someone who can translate all of these things between teams. And so it's not just one skill set, it's many people. And if you want to run that whole engine, it requires a different sponsorship from the business, and it also requires a different culture in the organization. So I think faster time to market is so critical. That's a fantastic point.
Thanks both. And I think with that, I'll come to an end of this section, which was all about to AI or not to AI. I'll move on to another section now, and I have another set of rapid fire questions for you both. So we want to understand, where should we start preparing for sourcing and adopting into artificial intelligence? So Andy, first question to you then. Clearly, there are many opportunities sitting here across the 4 stages that you described, helping climb the service staircase as well. But at the same time, there are several risks in adopting artificial intelligence, and some of the questions coming in are already highlighting those risks. What would you say is a solid foundation on which a manufacturer can start building their AI thinking?
Okay. Yeah, again, the report will give a lot more details on this, so please have a look at it. But what we arrived at in the report is that the starting point is even before the decisions are being made about what AI to implement or with whom to partner with. So for a manufacturer that is developing advanced services or in the process of servitization, they need to keep an eye on in the very early stages of there will be a time and a place when scale matters. So putting themselves in the position of being able to scale within the next half year or the next year and thinking about what the organization needs to look like is the solid foundation. So we're talking about, and Achin already mentioned it, and we're talking about data structure, data quality, data ownership. So a lot of companies collect data, and when it comes to AI, it's not quite clear what they are allowed to do with the data and what they're not allowed to do with the data. Can they feed this into an external provider? What is the situation from the legal side? And so on and so on. So getting the business model very early, developing the business model, refining it, and during the refining stage, looking at where will be the critical cost factors when we develop this at scale, what AI opportunities will be there, and how do we best prepare ourselves in order to tap into this opportunity. That for us is the starting point.
Okay, thank you very much. So business model first and then AI, not AI first and then looking at the business model. So I think that's a very important insight coming out there. Coming back to then Achint, if a manufacturer was to come looking for sourcing AI capabilities from different providers, how should they prepare to source this? What would you want the manufacturer to be ready with before asking for your support?
So two points there. I think one is what would it, where are they ready or not? That's one point. And second is what do they need? So I think I love that quote. Best time to start was yesterday, and the next best time to start is now. So they have to start now. The AI revolution is happening. At the end of the day, AI is all about creating efficiencies. And there was automation first, then there was other machine learning, and now it's AI, and it's all of that is all about creating efficiency, and the best time to start is now. There are certain precursors that you should start building, but I think connecting to what Professor Andreas mentioned, you need a strong business sponsor right at the top in the C-suite, because when you go on this journey, absolutely correct, you have to think of the legal repercussions, you have to get domain expertise, you have to get someone in the service team, you have to get someone in the sales team, you have to have multiple different people in the organization to get involved to connect it to the business outcomes. And so for that, you need someone who is senior, a senior stakeholder involved to orchestrate this. And there has to be a bias for action and a culture of experimentation to be built. And that can only be built with a senior stakeholder driving it. If that doesn't happen, then the other outcome, which I've seen quite often happens, is there's a analysis paralysis that happens. People keep trying and testing, and there are skunk work projects that keep happening, but it doesn't get connected to the business outcome. So I think it's time to get started now, and there has to be a business sponsorship across the organization with a need for something to happen.
Thanks, Sachin. Andy, did you want to add something?
Yeah, just in addition, I think the third one is the business model, but specifically where will be the future costs of delivering this business model, or the future additional value that can be created through this business model. We see a lot of proof of concepts, skunk works that Achin mentioned, where it's not clear if they address a high value proposition that the organization is committed to. And then, of course, you lose commitment, sponsorship, resources, and it leads nowhere. Yeah.
Thank you. So start now if you haven't started yesterday. Have a business sponsorship and have a clear value proposition, which will be enabled by AI. So to remember those three things, very important. Andy, coming back to you, Achin has already said, start now if you haven't already started. When would you say it is the right time for a business to embed AI in the value proposition itself of an outcome-based service, of an advanced service?
Yeah, I mean, I'm coming back to the point. It's not a decision point as we start now. It is as a servitization is a process of, starting with a vision, a North Star, starting to test it, starting to refine it, starting to commit to it, and then investing in it. It is on the early stages that needs to be a foresight happening. So how will it look like when we go at scale? Where will the costs be, and what opportunities are out there to take these costs out, or take the risks out, or manage the risk? So it is not, and of course, part of the piloting around this will be AI supported piloting. It will be identifying, what kind of gains can we commit to for the customer, and so on. A lot of this will involve deep analysis, looking at root causes, and so on and so on. So it's part of this journey, and as the manufacturer starts to invest in it, in the back end of servitization, they will also invest in the AI tools that are already available. So it's not a matter of developing new tools, it's about finding these tools that address the core problem or the core challenges that the business model presents. And that is part of the ongoing journey.
Okay, thank you very much. I can see a lot of interesting questions coming through. So Achint, I'll ask you my last question for this section before we let our audience ask some difficult ones to both of you. If we say that AI is sort of the V8 engine that will accelerate the manufacturer's servitization journey, what would you say is the fuel for this V8 engine?
Yeah, so I think AI is as good as the data that is provided to it, and like for this V8 engine, you need high quality data, and there are various terms that will be thrown. Big data, small data. Small data is essentially insights that humans can consume. Big data is all of this data that machines needs to consume, and then now there is data that AI itself is generating, and that is quite useful. So having good quality foundational data is very, very critical for not only servitization in a POC, but for servitization to scale. I have noticed servitization generally, scaling servitization has become a challenge, and to really scale servitization, you need large amounts of data. You need AI to kind of consume that data and make sense of it, and yeah, data and technology is very much foundational for AI. And then there are a couple of questions that I've noticed, which I'll answer in this space itself. There are lots of questions around proprietary data, about OT data, about can we make this available in public domain? And again, these large players like Amazon and like AWS, I mean, we are an AWS certified product. All of these people have solved those problems. If you want to do it within your private domain, that is possible. If you want to do it in public domain, that is possible. There are various capabilities out there which mitigates all of these risks, and you don't have to solve it. They are already solved. You take the best practices, take advice from Advanced Services Group in terms of the direction to take, people to partner with, and and march forward. But again, the focus should be faster time to market. And with the V8 engine, I think it can enable you to do that.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot, Achint. So at this point, I would like to move to the Q&A section of this webinar. And I'll start with some of the questions that have already come in, some really interesting ones. Achint, you answered a couple of them. We'll start with Maya's question. And Andy, if I put this question to you to start with, if you believe that AI will allow companies to move faster to accelerate, where do you see that between the explore, engage, expand, exploit, the role of this acceleration? And do you think that companies that use AI have a higher chance of success in this servitization journey, and will they outperform others? Quite a few ones there, but I think you get the general idea where Maya is going.
I get the general idea, and just in my mind about how do I make this efficient, my answer. So I say something that's probably quite controversial. AI by itself I wouldn't think it accelerates servitization. And it shouldn't, because what we describe in servitization is a careful, systematic way of identifying a value proposition that the manufacturer can offer to their customers in order to provide, outcomes. This is not about rushing it as quickly as possible. Where AI comes in is then turn this into a high profit enterprise. It turns this into something where the risk can be managed, can be controlled, and can be costed, and so on and so on. So you don't want to rush these services. I mean, AI gives you little tools. For example, if you don't have enough data or so, you can use AI tools to generate artificial data sets in order to run your simulation and so on. So there are individual tools that can help you to accelerate some of these processes, but you don't want to rush this. You want to do it systematically and rigorously. And AI will have its important place and absolutely critical when it comes to profit. And the success of servitization at the end is value and profit. And that is where AI comes in. The success of servitization is not as quickly as possible rushing out something that might not lead to value and profit.
Thanks, Andy. Achint, would you like to add anything else to this?
No, I absolutely agree. The servitization at the heart of it is about maximum extraction of value from your product and you making the maximum amount of profit. And AI is that engine that creates efficiency either in your backend from a service perspective or creates self-service. And that is creating that efficiency essentially increases your profitability. And that is what I'll give one anecdotal evidence. One of the company that we work with, there are 50 people just at the other side of the call center, helping them with what parts to order, what part of the documentation can they use to fix the problem. All of those issues can be resolved with AI and with self-service. There's a good public example out there from JLR, where they have enabled AI for all of their service technicians and reducing fix rates from 2 hours to 10 minutes. And those are good use cases of AI where it's creating efficiency, and that means that they are able to create higher profit.
Thanks a lot, Achint. And I think, Maya, if I may add to the points mentioned, what we have seen in the report when we studied some firms is the success is really dependent on how strong the business model and the value proposition is. The speed at which this success is achieved can be accelerated by AI. But AI itself is not your success factor. It is an accelerating factor. And if you have the right business model, the right value proposition that makes your customer successful, that will give you success in the best format. And I think, Achint, in your last point, you answered one of the question by Anand here about how AI can automate service operations in the back end around maintenance calls and so on. So, Anand, I hope that helped you get the right answer. You will see more use cases in the white paper as well. I'd like to come to another question, and quite an interesting one. I'll start with you, Achint. Is how do you manage the challenges for the automation sector? And this is something we hear a lot about, the uniqueness of plants, that our plant is unique, our equipment is unique, the data, the hardware and the software, it has to be localized. We are special. What do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, we come across this a lot also. A lot of them we work with, they say, hey, my business is unique and my data is unique and my processes are unique. Sure, there are nuances where it is unique, but but generally in the industrial sector, partners like ours would have seen problems similar to those, and they can be solved. So that's one. On the IoT side, I mean, because we are talking about hardware, software, and connecting plants, there is a lot of standardization that has happened in the last 10 years or so with OPC UA and other protocols, and that standardization means it's much more easier to get data connected and then make sense of it. So that is, standardization is happening. We have seen a lot of these sort of issues, problems, opportunities, multiple places, and so there is repeatability out there. And I think the other thing is, it's all about making smaller steps. So once you get started, even in that plant, what is important is to get started and then iterate and then expand the outcome from that, AI in hardware and software. And so I would say AI is all about probabilistic outcomes. It is not a definite answer. And hence I reiterate the whole point about experimentation. You have to experiment when it comes to AI.
Thank you
Richard,
very
I know
much.
you're looking at the time, but
go ahead, Andy, of course.
One point. So we keep hammering the point of it starts early. So if you find that all of it is unique in terms of data structure, data architecture, then you have made a mistake. So the value that you can get from being special is probably not that high. So try to reduce or become more standardized. That makes it a lot easier to tap into the established models that are already developing at speed out there.
Thanks, Andy. Yeah, and I think we see the challenge of uniqueness when we discuss servitization with manufacturing firms as well. They all struggle to generalize it to a level that the concepts of servitization apply across different industry sectors, whether you have an engine with 14,000 moving parts or whether you have a material that is almost binary. It is either on or off. It doesn't need maintenance, but servitization can be applied to these different examples. So at this point, as you can see, we are just going through some of our content and reminders of the different resources available. I would like to thank everybody for all of the excellent questions they have sent. We will answer them via email. There are some questions about asking us for the link to this white paper. You will receive the white paper in the follow-up email coming after the webinar. Don't forget to send us your best guess of how many times we have mentioned the word servitization, and you will receive a TwinGPT. You saw the example of it, a TwinGPT trial from Industriality. And thank you very much for attending and for your time. Thank you to our speakers today, to Achint Varia from Industriality and Professor Andreas Schroeder from Lancaster University Management School. And have an excellent weekend, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.